And they said, video rolling and all that. And I got all ready, jumped up and down, and then they said, never mind, cut it. And then I went to take a bite of soup. The next thing I know, action, Shelley.
Shelley Duvall didn't look like a movie star, and that's exactly why you couldn't stop watching her. One glance and she stayed with you. Wide eyes, fragile presence, a voice that sounded like it might disappear mid-sentence. She didn't command the screen, she unsettled it. Before Hollywood ever noticed her, Shelley Duvall was living a quiet life in Texas, studying nutrition, hosting friends, avoiding attention. Acting wasn't a dream, it wasn't even a plan. When strangers approached her about being in a movie, she assumed the worst. She thought it was a scam. She thought it was something dirty. She told them she wasn't an actress and tried to walk away. Then something changed. She got on a plane. She said yes. And suddenly, she was standing inside a world that didn't reward certainty, only curiosity. Directors like Robert Altman saw something rare in her. Not polish, not control, but honesty, the kind you can't fake. Shelley gravitated towards strange stories, uncomfortable characters, films that drifted instead of declared, movies that lived in silences, pauses, and contradictions. Tonight, we're counting down Shelley Duvall's 6 favorite films. Not just the movies she appeared in, but the ones that reflected her taste, her instincts, and her inner world. As we move from 6 to 1, ask yourself this. What kind of stories does someone choose when they've never tried to impress anyone? Number 6, Roxanne.
Do you want to come in?
I sort of already did. I figured you must be starving, so I made us some cheese and some vegetables, au naturel.
By the late 1980s, Shelley Duvall had nothing left to prove. She had worked with visionaries. She had survived chaos. She had carried films that lived in discomfort. And then she chose Roxanne. At first glance, it feels lighter than the rest of her favorites. Warmer, safer. But that's exactly why it mattered. Roxanne is a story about honesty hiding in plain sight, about intelligence being overlooked, about love delayed not by cruelty, but by fear. Steve Martin's C.D. Bales is brilliant, funny, and deeply insecure. He believes one flaw cancels out everything else. Shelley Duvall understood that feeling. She plays Dixie, Roxanne's closest friend. Not flashy, not central to the romance, but essential. Dixie is the one who sees clearly while everyone else overcomplicates the truth. She doesn't posture, she doesn't manipulate, she observes. That restraint is classic Duvall. In one of the film's most revealing moments, Dixie tells a riddle. Simple objects, obvious answers. And then the point lands. Sometimes the truth is so clear that people refuse to see it. Not because it's hidden, but because it's terrifying. That line wasn't just dialogue, it was philosophy. Duvall gravitated toward characters like Dixie because they live slightly outside the spotlight. They aren't the ones being chased. They're the ones noticing what everyone else misses. The quiet translators between chaos and clarity. After years of emotionally demanding roles, Roxanne offered something different. Not escape, perspective. The film argues that cleverness isn't connection, that performance isn't intimacy, that hiding behind words is still hiding. For someone like Duvall, who had spent a career exposing vulnerability, that message resonated. She had seen how easily people confuse charm with truth. Dixie doesn't lecture, she nudges. She plants an idea and lets it grow. She understands that love isn't about presentation, it's about courage. That theme runs quietly through the film. C.D. Bales knows what to say, he just can't say it as himself. And the tragedy isn't rejection, it's delay. Wasted time, missed moments. Shelley Duvall's presence reinforces that sadness. She brings warmth without sentimentality, wisdom without superiority. Dixie feels like someone who has learned things the hard way. By this point in her career, Duvall had experienced the extremes of filmmaking, improvisation, perfectionism, praise, criticism. She knew how fragile confidence could be. Roxanne reflects that maturity. It doesn't punish insecurity, it understands it. And it gently insists that hiding costs more than honesty ever will. Shortly after this period, Duvall stepped away from acting, not in retreat, but in choice. She moved toward producing, toward children's storytelling, toward gentler worlds. Seen in that light, Roxanne feels like a transition, a film about saying what matters before silence takes over. Here's the question this film leaves behind. If the truth is obvious, why do we wait so long to speak it? For Shelley Duvall, Roxanne wasn't just a romantic comedy. It was a reminder that clarity is an act of bravery. And sometimes, the simplest words are the hardest to say. Number 5. The Shining.
Well, I think maybe he should be taken to a doctor.
You think maybe he should be taken to a doctor?
This is the film people think they understand. They remember the screams, the bat, the blood in the hallway. But Shelley Duvall remembered something else entirely. Fear. Not cinematic fear. Human fear. When she first read The Shining, she didn't finish it calmly. She locked every door in her house. She waited for someone else to come home before she slept. The story didn't feel like fiction. It felt possible. That reaction mattered to Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick didn't want a horror heroine who felt strong. He wanted one who felt real, someone overwhelmed, someone cracking under pressure, someone whose terror didn't look heroic. That's why he chose Shelley Duvall. Her Wendy Torrance isn't built to fight monsters. She's built to survive them. Wendy is anxious, watchful, constantly calculating how to keep the peace. She explains away danger because acknowledging it would mean confronting the truth. That instinct is painfully human. Duvall played Wendy as someone trapped long before the hotel closed in. Trapped by love, by hope, by the belief that people can change if you just wait long enough. Kubrick pushed her relentlessly, take after take, hundreds of repetitions. Not to punish her, but to exhaust the performance of fear until only real fear remained. The camera doesn't capture acting, it captures endurance, and it shows. Wendy's dialogue isn't dramatic, it's practical, apologetic, she reassures Danny. She explains Jack's past mistakes without condemning him. She tries to protect everyone at once, even when that's impossible. That tension defines the role. Shelley Duvall understood Wendy because she understood imbalance, being the emotional center while everything around you destabilizes, carrying responsibility without authority, loving someone who is slowly becoming unsafe. Wendy doesn't scream because she's weak. She screams because she's finally stopped pretending. That moment is the turning point. When Wendy picks up the bat, it isn't empowerment, it's desperation. Survival stripped of dignity. Fear allowed to be loud. Kubrick never lets Wendy become a symbol. She remains a person, shaking hands, wide eyes, tears that don't look graceful. Duvall later spoke warmly about Kubrick, surprising those who assumed bitterness. She described him as patient in conversation, curious, gentle away from the camera. The cruelty was never personal, it was surgical. She learned from it. The Shining taught her that vulnerability could carry a film just as powerfully as strength. That terror didn't need to be stylized to be unforgettable. The audience debate around Wendy misses the point. She isn't passive, she's realistic. She reacts the way many people would when fear arrives slowly, wearing the face of someone they love. Here's the question the film leaves behind. When danger comes from inside your home, how long do you deny it before it's too late? For Shelley Duvall, The Shining wasn't about madness or ghosts. It was about endurance under silence. And that's why Wendy stays with us. Because fear, when it's honest, doesn't look brave. It looks like her. Number 4. 3 Women.
How many times do I have to tell you my name is Mildred? You got it? It's Mildred!
This was the film where Shelley Duvall stopped performing and started exposing herself. 3 Women didn't come from a script in the usual sense. It came from a dream. Robert Altman woke up, wrote it down, and handed it to Duvall. What followed wasn't acting. It was excavation. Shelley Duvall plays Millie Lamoureux, a woman who never stops talking. She fills silence with trivia, recipes, decorating tips, magazine advice, anything to avoid the truth she doesn't know how to face. Millie believes adulthood has rules. If you follow them, you'll be accepted. She dresses right, talks right, plans a life that looks correct on paper, but none of it works. People don't listen, they tolerate. That disconnect is the heart of the film. Duvall didn't just play Millie, she built her. She wrote much of the dialogue herself. She borrowed from her own habits, her own vanities, her own insecurities. Later, she admitted she put the parts of herself she liked least directly into the character. That's why Millie feels so uncomfortable to watch. She isn't evil. She isn't foolish. She's desperate to belong. The film moves like a mirage. Identities blur. Personalities shift. Reality bends without warning. What begins as social awkwardness becomes something darker, something psychological, something unstable. Millie's confidence erodes scene by scene. The more she talks, the less she exists. Her voice fills the room, but she's invisible inside it. Shelley Duvall understood that loneliness. Fame doesn't protect you from being overlooked. Sometimes it amplifies it. The more visible you are, the easier it is for people to project onto you instead of seeing you. Three Women refuses to explain itself. It doesn't guide the audience. It doesn't clarify motives. It trusts discomfort, and Duvall carries that discomfort without softening it. There's a moment when Millie lashes out, accusing others of not behaving the way they're supposed to. Drinking, smoking, living correctly. The line sounds absurd, then sad, then frightening, because it reveals fear. A fear that if she follows every rule and still isn't chosen, then the rules are meaningless. That fear breaks her. Duvall never asks for sympathy. She lets Millie unravel slowly. Her performance isn't loud, it's relentless. The tension comes from repetition, from watching someone perform normalcy until it collapses under its own weight. Altman trusted her completely. He gave her freedom, space, responsibility, and she delivered something unforgettable. When Duvall won Best Actress at Cannes, it wasn't for transformation. It was for exposure. For letting the audience see someone who didn't know who she was pretending to be. That takes courage. Here's the question the film leaves behind. If your identity is built on being accepted, what happens when acceptance never comes? For Shelley Duvall, Three Women wasn't just a career highlight, it was a confession. A portrait of what happens when a person tries too hard to become real. And in that vulnerability, she created something haunting. Because the scariest thing in the film isn't the dream logic, it's recognition. Number 3, Annie Hall.
Oh,
Are you okay? What's the matter? Are you all right? What?
There's a spider in the bathroom.
What?
There's a big black spider in the bathroom.
This was the moment Shelley Duvall stepped outside her comfort zone. After years inside Robert Altman's loose, drifting worlds, Annie Hall asked for something different. Precision, timing, control. Woody Allen's humor doesn't float. It lands exactly where it's placed. And Shelley Duvall had to land with it. She plays Pam, a journalist steeped in self-awareness, theory, and irony. She's intelligent, confident, slightly amused by everyone around her. And for a brief moment, she becomes part of Alvy Singer's emotional orbit. It's a small role, but it's sharp. Pam isn't awkward in the Altman sense. She's composed, verbal, analytical. Her humor comes from distance, not vulnerability. And that contrast mattered for Duvall. The famous bedroom exchange says everything. Pam describes intimacy with Alvy as Kafkaesque. She means it kindly. He takes it seriously. The joke isn't the word, it's the disconnect. Two people speaking the same language but meaning different things. That tension defines Annie Hall. The film isn't about love failing, it's about misalignment. About how people with good intentions still talk past each other. How self-analysis doesn't always lead to understanding. Shelley Duvall fit into that world surprisingly well. She understood neurotic distance, the safety of intelligence, the way humor can become armor. Pam doesn't fall apart. She doesn't need validation. She observes, she comments, she moves on. For an actor known for emotional exposure, this restraint was a deliberate shift. Duvall wanted to prove she could exist inside a more traditional Hollywood rhythm. She wanted range. And Annie Hall gave her that without forcing her to abandon what made her unique. Her presence adds texture. Pam feels like a person who has read the same books as Alvy, but drawn different conclusions. She isn't impressed by his anxiety. She isn't threatened by it either. That calm destabilizes him. The film itself changed the language of romantic comedy. Direct address, animated inserts, split screens. Memory treated as structure instead of background. And Duvall stepped into that experimentation without hesitation. She didn't overplay the role. She didn't soften it. She trusted that stillness could be funny. That confidence mattered. Annie Hall represented a crossroads for Duvall. She could have stayed exclusively inside Altman's universe. Instead, she tested herself against another strong voice, another demanding director, another way of telling truth, and she held her ground. The role expanded her audience. It introduced her to viewers who hadn't followed her earlier work, and it proved she wasn't defined by one style, even if she preferred it. Here's the question the film leaves behind. When intelligence becomes the center of a relationship, does it bring people closer or push them apart? Annie Hall never settles that. It lets humor carry the uncertainty. For Shelley Duvall, the film wasn't about reinvention. It was about confirmation that she could move between worlds without losing herself. And sometimes, growth looks like knowing you can leave and still return to who you are. Number 2, Nashville.
I'm going to dedicate this to someone kind of special who just might be here tonight. This is a song called I'm Easy.
This is where Shelley Duvall became part of something bigger than herself. Nashville isn't a movie you watch for plot. It's a movie you enter. 24 characters, dozens of conversations, music bleeding into politics, fame brushing against anonymity. It's loud, messy, overlapping, and somehow honest. Shelley Duvall fits into that chaos effortlessly. She plays L.A. Jones, sometimes called Martha, a drifter, a fan, a young woman floating through the city collecting autographs like proof she was there. She doesn't chase power, she chases proximity. To stars, to attention, to the idea of belonging. That choice matters. L.A. Joan doesn't demand space. She slips into it. She smiles. She waits. She asks politely if someone will sign a record. It's a small action, but it reveals everything. She wants to be seen, not celebrated. Duvall understood that impulse. By the mid-1970s, she had become a familiar face in Altman's world. He trusted her instincts. He knew she could inhabit characters who felt slightly off-center, slightly out of sync with the room, and Nashville is full of people out of sync. The film treats celebrity as noise. Everyone is famous to someone. Everyone is invisible to someone else. Fame is constant, but connection is rare. L. A. Joan floats between those realities. She isn't cynical. She isn't naive either. She simply exists where admiration replaces intimacy. Her energy is light, almost empty, but not cruel. She believes in the surface because the surface is all she's been invited into. That quiet sadness is easy to miss. Altman doesn't underline her arc. He lets her pass through scenes like background music. But Duvall gives her weight anyway. Small gestures, nervous excitement, the way she clings to objects signed by people who don't remember her name. Those details matter. Nashville is about America watching itself. Politics turning into performance, music turning into messaging, people turning into brands. Duvall's character is caught in that transformation without fully understanding it. She believes closeness equals meaning. Elvis fans would later understand that feeling too. Duvall trusted Altman because he never forced clarity. He believed confusion was honest. And Nashville thrives on confusion. Conversations overlap, songs interrupt scenes, no single story dominates. That freedom allowed Duvall to be natural. She once said she believed in Altman completely, not because he explained everything, but because he didn't. He let actors exist. He let moments breathe. He trusted that truth would appear without being announced. And it does. The film's ending shocks because it feels inevitable. Chaos doesn't resolve, it escalates. And L.A. Joan is still there, part of the crowd, part of the noise, part of the moment. She doesn't learn a lesson. She doesn't escape. She simply witnesses. That's why Nashville stayed with Shelley Duvall. It mirrored the industry she worked inside. An environment where everyone performs, few listen, and admiration often replaces understanding. Here's the question the film leaves behind. When fame surrounds you constantly, does it bring you closer to people or make you easier to overlook? For Duvall, Nashville wasn't about stardom. It was about proximity without connection, and the quiet loneliness hiding inside a crowd. In a film bursting with voices, she made silence speak. Shelley Duvall's favorite films weren't about comfort. They were about curiosity, about people drifting instead of conquering, about identity slipping, love misfiring, faith being tested, and truth arriving too late to be useful. These weren't flashy choices. They were revealing ones. Again and again, the pattern is clear. She gravitated toward characters on the edges, observers, believers, survivors, people who didn't dominate their worlds but absorbed them. That instinct mirrored her own career. Shelley Duvall never tried to overpower the screen. She let it lean toward her. These films show a woman drawn to risk, emotional risk, psychological risk, creative risk. Whether enduring Kubrick's relentless pressure, exposing herself completely for Altman, or stepping briefly into someone else's rhythm, she chose honesty over safety every time. And maybe that's why her work still unsettles people. It doesn't reassure. It doesn't explain itself. It lingers. Shelley Duvall didn't chase fame, she followed instinct. And instinct led her to stories that felt unfinished, unresolved, and deeply human. So now the question turns to you. Which of these films changed how you see her? Which one reveals her spirit most clearly? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this journey moved you, like the video and subscribe for more stories that look past the surface. Because some actors don't fade, they echo.